The terrorist raised the missile launcher, locked onto the president's private jet, and then took out the newly developed surface-to-air missile, firing it at the plane. The missile, trailing a plume of white smoke, sped towards its target. The presidential jet detected the incoming missile and immediately prepared to release decoys. However, at the crucial moment, the computer screens went completely black. The president's bodyguard, sensing something was wrong, quickly alerted the security personnel on board to go into combat mode. He then rushed into the president's lounge and escorted him to the cargo hold. With the missile set to hit the plane in 2.5 minutes, the bodyguard had no choice but to push the president into the escape pod. He then closed the pod door, pressed the activation switch, and launched the escape pod out of the plane. The security team also jumped from the plane, but strangely, their parachutes did not open. One of the security officers noticed something was amiss, but was shot dead by the president's bodyguard. It turned out that the president's bodyguard was actually in cahoots with the terrorists. Meanwhile, the low-altitude missile fired by the terrorists sped past the bodyguard and struck the presidential jet and the escorting F-16 fighter jets. The planes eventually lost control and crash-landed in a forest in Finland. The Pentagon detected that Air Force One was in danger and that the president's escape pod had lost contact. The Secretary of Defense immediately established an emergency command center and dispatched the Navy SEALs for a rescue mission. At that moment, the president was trapped in the escape pod and was discovered by a boy hunting in the jungle. The boy cautiously approached with a bow and arrow, and knocked on the escape pod door out of curiosity. Thinking it was his bodyguard, the president wrote the code to open the pod door on the escape pod window. After the boy entered the code and quickly hid, the president opened the pod door. Upon learning that the man inside was the president of the United States, the boy immediately took him away from the area. By the time the bodyguard arrived with the terrorists, the president was already gone. The boy who rescued the president was a hunter from a local tribe. According to tribal rules, once a boy reaches adulthood, he must venture into the jungle alone to hunt a wild animal to prove his strength. He never expected to save the president of the United States. The next day, while the boy was leading the president away, they discovered numerous security personnel's bodies. The president realized there was a traitor among his security team and quickly picked up a submachine gun from the ground. But at that moment, he saw his personal bodyguard approaching with the terrorists. Knowing he couldn't escape, the president tried to get the boy to leave, but the bodyguard had already caught up and punched the president in the stomach. He then called a helicopter, put the president in a freezer, and prepared to transport him away. Determined to save the president and prove his strength, the boy quickly climbed to the top of a hill and, seizing the right moment, leaped forward.